Good evening and thanks for tuning into Mirror Now. You're watching the Urban Debate. I'm Avni Raja. Our first focus this evening at this point is going to be the economic slowdown. In fact, serious concerns are being raised over the economic slowdown that we are facing currently. Corporate India is extremely worried. More and more corporate leaders are coming out and sounding the warning bell. In fact, let's just look at what happened today. First of all, more data came out that is extremely concerning. The Index of Industrial Production, or the IIP numbers for the month of June were extremely weak. IIP came in at 2% for June versus 3.1% in May. And in fact, 1 year back, it was as high as 7%. And this time across the sectors, there has been a further slowdown. So if you look at manufacturing output, if you look at mining, both came in lower. But what's even more upsetting is the fact that capital goods and infrastructure actually contracted in June. Well, that's not all. The other part of what happened today is top corporate leaders met the finance minister today, raised concerns over the economic slowdown. In fact, Adi Godrej, the chairman of Godrej Group, said that the union budget did not have too many provisions for the revival of the economy. Godrej pointed out that a special package is needed to revive the economy and revive the capital markets. In fact, Adi Godrej's remarks come only a few days after HDFC chairman, SBI chairman, among others, all of them have been raising their concern over the slowdown. In the recent credit policy, the RBI governor, after an unprecedented rate cut of 0.35%, made it clear that the economic slowdown is a top priority at this point in time. So the question now is, with so many alarm bells ringing from across the board, how deep of a slowdown are we really in? Is this slowdown a structural problem? And are confidence booster packages that are being talked about at this point in time and measures to boost the sentiment going to be enough to reverse the slowdown? And what's the solution? Those are the big questions we're going to try and answer. But first, listen in to what Adi Godrej had to say.
Several things need to be done. The economy has slowed down. Unfortunately, the budget didn't have too many provisions of reviving the economy. Now it's more clear, and I hope the government does something. Maybe it was best if it was never done, but now that's done and gone. Now we need to correct the situation, and then we have to see whether if the economy picks up.
Well, joining me to talk more about this, Mohan Guruswamy, senior economist and chairman for the at the Center for Policy Alternatives in New Delhi, Abhishek Mishra, BJP leader, Sunil Alag, founder, SKA Advisors, and Professor Arun Kumar, chair professor, Institute of Social Sciences, former professor and chairperson of Center for Economic Studies as well. In fact, let me start with you, Mr. Guruswamy. Your assessment of what we are seeing at this point in time. We've been talking about a lot of these indicators for a long time, but now we're seeing corporate India across the board who are raising alarm bells, who are talking about this slowdown being much deeper. And of course, we heard the RBI governor a few days ago say that this is perhaps a cyclical slowdown, but that doesn't really seem to be the case at this point from what's coming out.
Well, the RBI governor said he didn't know if it was cyclical or if it was structural. It is both, actually, because you have these cycles anyway taking place, slowdowns and speed-ups, but this is a deep structural flaw in the economy. It's not something which the Modi government did. It is something which has been on the trend from 2010, 2011, when capital expenditure started falling and savings rate started falling. Tax GDP ratio started falling. So all these things have come to a head now. You can't have growth. You can't create jobs. You can't have investment without the government showing the way and leading it with its own package of capital expenditure. Private sector, private industry can never pick up the slack. The government has to drive the economy. And the government lacks a plan and lacks determination and also lacks an ability to see what is obvious. And they keep living in deluding themselves about talking about this growth rate and that growth rate, fastest, second fastest. We're number 3 in the world now in terms of GDP and all that. All that is hogwash. The real proof of the pudding lies in how much of money are you investing to stimulate growth. Now today I read that the industrialists asked for 1 lakh crores package to stimulate the economy, which is nothing. In a GDP of about 160, 170 lakh crores, 1 lakh crores will just disappear mostly into revenue expenditure. What the government needs is a focused attack on building infrastructure to stimulate growth. And that growth will pick up now, maybe start now, take some years to pick up now. What you've lost, you've lost.
Right.
There's no short-term fix now.
Right. Professor Arun Kumar, if I can come to you at this point, like Mr. Guruswamy was pointing out, that these kind of solutions at this point may not be the ideal way, may not even work. We're talking about confidence boosting packages. We're talking about, these kind of packages at this point in time. Do you think those kind of measures will solve the problem?
My judgment is it won't, because the problem did not originate from the organized sector industry. The problem originated from the unorganized sector, which suffered one after the other 3 shocks in the last 3 years. The first, the demonetization impacted the unorganized sector very badly, and it started declining. And then soon after, GST hit it, and even though unorganized sector is exempt from GST largely, but it got hit because it could not cope with the GST. And the organized sector also could not cope with GST because there were more than 1,000 changes in GST in the last 2 years. So both slowed down, and then the NBFC crisis further slowed it down. So in other words, an economy which was facing crisis, starting from the unorganized sector, now the crisis has manifested itself in the organized sector, in the automobile sector, in freight traffic, in cement, and various FMCG sectors. And those are not just capital items. Those are because of lack of demand. FMCG declines because people are not purchasing adequately. It's not just capital investment. And then the problem comes that when your demand is down, then the capacity utilization is low, and the RBI data shows that industry is running at between 70 and 75% capacity utilization in the last 3 years. Now, because of that, the investment does not revive. So even though the stock market is booming, it's reached a peak about 3-4 months back, and still the investment did not revive. Interest rate was cut by the RBI 4 times, and this time it signaled an even higher cut. And still, my suspicion is it will not lead to an increase in investment in the economy. So I think the problem lies in the unorganized sector. There, the unemployment has increased, as the CMI data shows. The workforce declined from 450 million to 410 million. So 40 million, people out of the workforce, especially women, who have lost a lot of jobs. So therefore, the demand comes down. And when the demand in the unorganized sector with the large number of people goes down, then the food prices get affected and agriculture goes into a crisis. Right. And we see agriculture as a crisis, employment as a crisis. So unless we revive that, simply giving a 1 lakh crore package will not work.
Right.
The economy is about 200 lakh crores. Investment is roughly about 60 lakh crores. So 1 lakh crore in 60 lakh crore is not going to be very much. So if private sector investment has to be revived, for which demand has to be revived. And for that, there's a different kind of package than giving concessions or boosting the, cutting down the interest rates.
Right. Right. So essentially what you're saying, Professor Kumar, is that these are probably band-aid solutions and not going to address the root cause of the problem. Well, Sunil Alag, your view on this, because like we've been talking about, from car sales, two-wheeler sales, even things like biscuits, everything is sort of slowing down. People are just not going out and buying. And let's not even talk about real estate, because that's been in the doldrums for several years now, which no signs of revival. We're looking at cuts from the RBI. Finance Ministry has been urging banks to cut rates. RBI has been urging banks to cut rates. But that's just not happening because banks are dealing with their own set of problems of the NPA crisis, and they are scared to send out, to probably give out loans or taking that much more precaution, as they should be perhaps. What is the way out? How do you see this?
What Professor Arun Kumar and everybody else is saying, it's all fine. They've all raised all the problems. Nobody seems to come up with any solution at the moment. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not an economist as much as they are at that level, but all the same, all I want to say is that, look, I agree with Professor Arun Kumar, unless demand is the only thing which is the oil in the engine. So once the demand grows, then industry will start picking up and there'll be more jobs and everything else will go on. But how do you get demand going? Look, What have they done? 300 million of the middle income group, they've put no money into the hands at all in the last budget. When somebody was asked, they said, well, in February we gave them, I think there was some kind of tax relief, but then again they raised the petrol prices up again. So, and they've given the rural economy, they're saying something like as small as 6,000 rupees or something like that. Now that's not enough. So once you have to take a big bite, get the demand going, get the perception to change in the market, and then the industry will start picking up and everybody else will start going, because we seem to be obsessed with, I've been saying it over the years, we seem to be obsessed with fiscal deficit, and the government and RBI seems to be obsessed with inflation. So between the two, they are going to ruin the economy in any case, because if you look at anybody in any growing economy, even if inflation went up to 6%, I'm saying that it doesn't mean anything at all. You don't have a runaway inflation, but trying to keep inflation at 4% doesn't mean anything in a growing economy. Again, fiscal deficit, if it goes up to 4%, big deal. Government must put money in, their obsession must stop. And if you put money in the hands of the middle income group, which is completely lacking, and therefore reduce the tax for them. I'm not saying reduce the tax for the rich. If you want to tax the rich, go ahead and do it. But at the same time, you're giving no relief whatsoever. And all I can say when you talk about biscuits and things like that's the last thing to get affected. And one more thing I want to quickly add is that most of the companies seems to be showing increase in profits in spite of dropping sales. So they also need to put their hand out and say, I'm going to drop prices. No, I'm going to encourage demand. It doesn't matter. So it has to be not just the government doing it, but all of us need to put in, because if you look at the profits have all gone up. Everyone seems to report higher profits. And yet we are talking about lowering of demand. So I think the industry has to move and create the demand, and government has to put more money into the hands of the consumer. And let's try it. These are not something which you cannot reverse. Even if you reduce the tax, you can increase it again after a year, year and a half. GST, tourism. Look, we are one of the most expensive in the world if you try and take hotels. They are immediately, when you try and increase tourism, get back to the fact that if somebody is paying in dollars, don't apply any GST in the hotels. These are very simple things that I'm suggesting, that look, encourage tourism, your non-skilled labor will go up, demand will start going up, and get going to giving people money in the hands.
But Mr. Alag, I don't think it's as simple. I don't think it's as simple as just companies start cutting prices or start taking off GST. Already we are suffering from GST collections being hit. Mr. Guruswamy, I'll give you a chance to respond.
In a situation like this, it is as simple as that. You have to start somewhere.
But Mr. Alag, my only problem with that, solution is that right now the sentiment is so bad. People are scared of losing their jobs. So even if you cut down the prices, it doesn't mean that people are going to go out and buy. And there's no question of their job losses. People are scared they'll lose their jobs. So it's not as simple as somebody cutting down prices so the demand picks up. I think it's much deeper than that. But Mr. Guruswamy, I'll give you a chance to respond to Mr. Alag.
Look.
But Mr. Alag, let's also get in Abhishek Mishra as well, who's been sitting here quietly for all this time.
Jobs will get lost in any case. If you don't do something, jobs will get lost.
Right. We're already at an all-time low as far as job creation is concerned. It's one of the worst that we've seen in years. But Abhishek Mishra, you've heard what all the other panelists have...
It'll get worse.
Yes, you've heard what all the other panelists have said. We've heard that there are confidence-boosting packages that the finance ministry is looking at. We're possibly going to see, or we may see something changing as far as long-term capital gains tax is concerned. But the question really is that enough? Is that really going to work? And the question that Mr. Guruswamy and Sunil Alag both talked about as far as fiscal deficit is concerned, we'll get to that in a little bit as well. But your first reaction.
See, today the Honorable Finance Minister met all the people from various parts of the industry, and her first statement was that the government and the Reserve Bank of India, they are on the same page, that the economy has to grow. The economy needs a stimulus to, go ahead. The Honorable Prime Minister clearly said that we are going to go towards a $5 trillion economy. In a previous debate also with Mr. Guruswamy, he was saying that, it cannot happen. But I said, when the Prime Minister said that, all the doomsayers, naysayers, people who are pessimists, people, I didn't interrupt. Now, this is wrong. This man, Goswami, he's a senior citizen. He should be silent. He should be silent.
I will give you a chance
I
to
did
respond
not
to
speak in between.
Mohan
He has to learn some manners.
Guruswami, if
He
you
has to
could
learn some
let
manners.
Abhishek Mishra finish his point, I'll give you a chance to respond.
Learn some manners.
I will give you a chance to
learn some
respond,
manners.
Mr. Mishra. Mr. Guruswami, Mr. Mishra, please go ahead.
No, I don't have to learn manners from a pracharak here.
Mr. Guruswami, if we can just allow everybody to speak, get their points. It's a very important issue. We should be talking about solutions.
But he's misquoting me.
Let's let Mr. Abhishek Mishra finish talking. I'll give you a chance to respond. Please go ahead, Mr.
So, Honorable Prime Minister said that the country has to go forward towards a $5 trillion economy through investment, through improving the manufacturing sector, the services sector. And he said that there will be people who will be doomsayers, say, ye nahi ho raha, that cannot happen, this cannot happen. But we have to focus on the task. And that is why the Honorable Finance Minister Sitharaman today said, three things, very important three things. She said every suggestion of the industry, the government is willing to look into. On the various taxes you spoke about, the new tax on the foreign investment portfolio, she said we are going to reconsider. Similarly, on the tax issue, income tax issue, what has happened recently to one of the founders of CCD, she said that wherever there is any problem by any tax agency, she is going to come there herself, solve the problem then and there, and also make a mechanism wherein the minister herself, as a finance minister, can do the monitoring of the system. So the industry was very much satisfied, because they were saying that at some times, which they felt, so she said, okay, we'll look into every case. If there is genuine reason, we are going to see your concern and address the concern. Third thing she said, wherever, as regards to the investment which is required, she said that government will make a policy on that, will make a framework, and we'll look into it. Fourthly, if you remember, in the budget, for the public, see, the basic issue is that during the Congress UPA regime, the money was given in loans, they have all become NPAs, and hence the banks are not putting in the money. Unless the banks start putting in the money in the system, the services, manufacturing sector cannot grow. You need to revive the economy. Hence, 70,000 crores has been given to the economy to revive. So if you see entire, the entire strategy of the government, wherein by again giving money to the banks to lend, secondly, listening to the concerns of the industry on regard to taxation issues, thirdly, if there is any problem with the tax agencies, to consider that as well.
Right.
So hence the government, and you have to understand, Avni, you study economics so well.
You're repeating yourself.
No, I have to repeat because there are two economists who are doomsayers. Hence, I have to put the optimistic part of a $5 trillion economy. Once again,
tell me one thing.
A $5 trillion economy is on Modi ji's vision, and we achieved the vision as Chandrayaan has been achieved, and 370 has been achieved, the removal in Kashmir.
I'm happy to hear that you're so optimistic about the $5 trillion economy, but today we are not talking. I don't think anybody in the country cares about a $5 trillion economy right now. They care about where they're going to get the next meal from. They care about whether they're going to have a job tomorrow. Those are the things that they care about.
So 70,000
so my question to you
put in the banks to again, that they lend in the market, the economy revives. The government is focused on reviving the economy, and hence even the foreign investment portfolio, we are going to look at the taxation issue. We are ready to solve it.
Abhishek Mishra, do you believe that this is a structural slowdown and it's not just part of a cycle? Tell me, in one sentence, if you can tell me, do you believe this is a structural slowdown?
Avni Raja, you have to understand one thing. I am from the BJP. I am not a RBI governor. Either I am a finance secretary. So no.
Do you believe? Okay, I won't use the economic term. Do you believe this slowdown is not part of a cycle and it is much deep-rooted and needs serious solutions than just band-aid solutions? Do you believe that?
On this, I agree that to move towards a $5 trillion economy, we need serious more improvement in the structure, and Modi ji is doing that. The minister is doing that, Honorable Finance Minister, and we are putting money back into the system. We are improving the. See, we are just every one thing.
All right,
transparency has been
all right. I've heard
yeah.
what you had to say. I would like to go back to Mr. Guruswami. You wanted to respond to what Abhishek Mishra said as well as to what Sunil Alagh said. Please go ahead.
This man keeps saying that we won't be 5 trillion. Of course we'll be 5 trillion. The question is, Modi says we'll be 5 trillion in 2024. That is not going to happen. If you want to be 5 trillion in 2024, you have to grow at about 12-14%.
No.
You're not going to grow at that rate.
Again wrong on that.
You won't grow unless you put money. Listen, No, you are wrong. You're wrong. You had your lies enough. and you speak half-truths.
Speak politely,
And then
Mr.
if you
Guruswamy.
want to get
Speak
this
politely.
Guruswamy, if you
Speak
can
politely.
speak to more
Have respect for your age.
Let's
Let's
Be
not-
polite. Be polite.
Mr. Guruswamy,
Be
if we
polite. It's a
cannot,
polite debate.
yes, if we
Don't
cannot
be
jibe
a
at each other, I
upper
will not
Naxal.
allow my
Don't-
panelists
don't
to
scream.
take jibes at each other. If you can respond to the point.
70,000 crores.
Yes, please go ahead.
70,000 crores is not going to be enough. It's not even a drop in the ocean. What you need is something much bigger. The finance minister had put a proposal to tap sovereign bonds abroad. Our foreign debt is 22% of GDP. We can easily borrow more. We can run down some of our reserves and bring that money into an infrastructure fund dedicated to infrastructure growth and operate that fund separately out of government. But these people are not thinking of these things.
No.
They only talk about big castles in the air.
This man, I don't know what agenda he has. Sovereign bond.
5 trillion ho jayega.
I'll tell you one thing.
No,
The
come on,
GST
yeah,
is a structural reform.
Come on.
The reform in the short run may have, as Amitabh Kant also said, may have
The
had
GST is
some
not a
difficulty
structured
for some
reform.
people. But in the long run,
Why did Modi oppose it so
will
much?
cause the economy to be
All right,
stronger
Abhishek
and
Mishra,
higher,
let
better.
Mohan Guruswamy finish saying
No,
what he was saying.
what he's
You
saying
asked
is-
him to stop speaking while you were talking.
No.
Let him finish speaking,
No,
please.
because he does that. So we have to remind him how it feels, right? I
Mr.
was very
Guruswamy,
polite.
please go ahead.
I was very polite initially. He's done that in previous debates also.
All right, Mr. Mishra. Mr. Guruswamy, please go ahead.
So you got to think big now. You're in a deep hole. The economy, Arun Subramaniam, who was the chief economic advisor, actually said the economy is going at 3.2%. And if it's slowing down, it'll head towards zero soon. But so you got to do something to raise people's hopes, optimism up. You know, in similar situation in 1999, Prime Minister Vajpayee then announced the big road building program. We didn't have a huge road building program. And then things picked up. There was a new buoyancy about. You know, there's steel production will go up, cement production will go up. People then start thinking of how to invest, how to grow. You know, this kind of buoyancy is not there because the mood is down. And you know, you keep talking about, and when you say something like 5 trillion in 2014, in 2024, it's not going to happen. So people's moods are even further down.
I'll have one
Abhishek,
line.
I
You don't
have
know
not
what they're
come to
talking
you.
about.
Can we please? I have other
I think
panelists
you've got
on
to
the show. I want to
No,
get
I think you've got
everyone's
too much time,
views.
too much time
Please.
to make his fake points.
No.
To demoralize the
Please
Indian.
let me handle the debate. It's my show. I will handle it.
Realistic.
Yeah.
Let's
Let
be
me just
realistic.
one line reply to
and
this
one other.
The negative man who is demoralizing
Abhishek
people.
Mishra, please.
One other point I have to make is, Sunil Alag said something about corporate profits rising. They're only rising this quarter. So till 2018, we were the lowest in a decade at 2.7%, Sunil. This is just one swallow. It's not even, doesn't herald spring now. So I think we'll have to wait. But that's a good sign. But it's still very low. So there is no money in the market. There's no money in business to invest. So government has to step in.
Yes, Sunil Alag, I think you wanted to respond to that?
No, all I wanted to say was that, look, so far the efforts of the government has been industry-led. I want them to be consumption-led in the economy. Maybe I've said something about profits rising or not rising. Okay, that's a very minor point. All I'm saying is it's about time you converted your efforts at being consumption-led rather than industry-led. And economists can carry on arguing. I've always been in favor of having a consumption-led economy. Even in America, when it went down in 2007, 2008, look, Mohan, I just want to finish saying, look, ultimately, if you don't put money in the hands of the consumer, you can keep giving money to banks, you can keep doing things at a macro level. It is not going to work because the perception, as Mohan Guruswamy and everybody is saying, how do you change it? You change it by giving money to consumers. Why are they saying, I will not buy a car now, I will buy the fridge next year, and I will go ahead and do it? Because the perception is wrong. And these are little steps which changes a perception. If you put money in the hands of the consumer, they will start spending. We are not, the rural economy is not going to start putting money under the mattress. They will go out and spend. And that is where the demand starts. All I'm saying is please be consumption-led. Please do a couple of moves. You're only talking industry-led. It has to be a combination. By ignoring one sector of the economy completely, it's not going to happen. And I agree with Mr. Modi's vision. Whatever Mishra is saying, Mr. Modi's vision is very good. But I don't see the effect and the steps being taken on the ground are matching his vision. That's all the point I'm making.
Right. Absolutely.
Look,
and
you've got
I
to get
completely agree
consumption-led
with you, Sunil.
to
I
find out
completely
what's
agree
happening.
with
Why
you
are
what you're
consumers
saying.
not spending? And
Yes.
there's a marketing issue. Let me try and tell you very quickly. I will tell you there are many little steps that can be done along with the good. Now again, I will say, look, if in four ways the RBI has reduced the interest at 0.25, 0.25, 0.25. If they had done 1% 6 months ago, that impact would have been huge. I mean, that's the perception move. The same 1% which they brought down in 6 months, they could have brought it down in one go. That changes the perception that, look, here's everything that's going down. Banks must lend. You're putting money into the banks and they are taking care of what they've lost earlier and not lending now doesn't help.
Yes.
So
yes.
how do you manage all this at the macro
Yes.
level? And at the micro level, the marketing and perception has to change. That's all I'm saying.
Right, absolutely. Professor Kumar, you wanted to come in and you can respond. But my question to you is also this, that there are so many moving parts here. On one hand, you need more spending, you need consumption to come back, you need demand to come back. But on the other hand, unless the government spends, that's not going to happen. And if the government keeps spending, if brings down taxes, the fiscal deficit is going to get impacted. So then is the solution to let fiscal deficit not be such a big issue at this point in time until we see this through and then come back to making fiscal deficit the target?
Yes.
What is the solution? Is that the solution?
Correct.
So, our fiscal deficit is not just 3.4% as the CAG said earlier, it is more like 5.5%. And if you include the states, it's more like 8%. So fiscal deficit is pretty high at the moment. And if you try and increase it, I think the credit rating agencies and others are going to react. Your interest rates will rise. Your international interest rates will also rise. So, in a sense, that's a problem. But I do think that, the government will have to spend more, but it will have to collect taxes from somewhere. But the problem is that GST collection is falling short by about 1 lakh crores last year, and the direct tax collection was short by about 60,000 crores. Now, on that projection, this year's revenue targets will also not be fulfilled because you'll require some like 24-25% increase in revenues if you are to collect and keep your fiscal deficit down to 4.3%, 3.4%. So in a sense, the government is in a catch-22 situation. It has also cut back the total capital investment in the budget. From last year, it was 9.2 lakh crores. It's cut it down to 8.5 lakh crores. But on the other hand, the government is promising we'll spend 100 lakh crores in 5 years, which is an average of 20 lakh crores. So we are nowhere close to that target of 20 lakh crores per annum. So in other words, government is in a catch-22 situation. Now, how do you get out of this is the real issue. And as I was saying earlier, the problem of demand began from the rural areas, from the unorganized sector. So you have to pump in demand there. And if you can pump in demand there and they begin to revive, then the demand in the economy would rise even in the organized sector. If you only think of the organized sector only employs 6% of the workforce. If that 6% benefits, it's still the 94% would be left out. So I think employment generating areas are where the government needs to spend a lot more. For instance, education, health, these are employment generating areas. Rural infrastructure, that will be very highly employment generating areas. So, rural, social and physical infrastructure are the areas where the government could increase its fiscal deficit and pump in demand over there. It needs to spend a lot more on Manrega. I'm told that the allocation of 60,000 crores for Manrega is inadequate because the demand is much greater. RBI data shows that the workers are only getting 40-45 days of work. They are not getting 100 days of work. If they began to get more work, they'd get more purchasing power and spend more. And then the Kisan scheme that has been there is only 85,000 crores, but that's inadequate to compensate for the demand fall in rural areas. So that needs to be stepped up. So if these kind of things are done, and we saw that in 2007-8, when some of these things were done, the Indian economy did not go down so much.
Yes.
The other thing is that in 2007-8, the Indian economy was robust, so international factors didn't affect us so much. But today, the international factors are affecting us and the Indian economy is going down, so its capacity to cope with the external shock will be less. So I think we have to really revive the rural area, the unorganized sector. That's where the focus should be.
Absolutely, Professor Kumar. I think a lot of relevant points you made, and I think that's a perfect point to sum up this entire debate on. But the debate doesn't end here because there is so much more to talk about. There is so much that we need to focus on, that the government needs to focus on. Rural demand is key. In fact, we know how bad the agriculture crisis has been in India for a long time now, and now that is spilling over into the urban areas. And this rural demand, rural crisis, agriculture crisis has to be solved, has to be addressed, and that has to be given priority. And at the same time, we have to see where we stand as far as the fiscal deficit is concerned. Are we okay with spending more, letting the fiscal deficit go just a bit? Is that the solution? Because there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of balance needs to be achieved here. And simply band-aid solutions, small sentiment boosters which push up the market temporarily is not going to solve the problem of the economy. And a $5 trillion economy is one thing to talk about, but let's look at the here and now and look at a way to solve the problem right now, to solve the problem of jobs, because these are the things that will help demand to grow and will help consumption to grow and hence will revive the economy. All right, let's in fact shift focus to another important issue here. The All India Institute of Medical Sciences has issued a statement saying that Arun Jaitley is undergoing treatment. Now, the statement also says that Arun Jaitley at this point is stable. Former Union Minister Arun Jaitley was admitted to AIIMS after suffering from chest congestion, is reportedly stable at the moment. Prime Minister Modi, Amith Shah, as well as Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman visited him at AIIMS just a short while back. In fact, we've got Alok who's joining us from AIIMS. Alok, the medical bulletin was just released a short while back, says that Arun Jaitley at this point is stable. If you can just take us through the details that you know.
Well, Avni, that former Finance Minister Arun Jaitley was brought to hospital at AIIMS today in the morning around 10 a.m. He had complaint of there is a chest congestion and also complaint of breathing, and that is why he was brought here. He was taken to Neurocardio Center where he is now under observation. In fact, he is also under intensive care unit. Just a few minutes ago, there was a bulletin released by the AIIMS authorities, and let me just read it for our viewers. What it says exactly, that Arun Jaitley was admitted to AIIMS today morning. He is currently undergoing treatment in the intensive care unit under the supervision of a multidisciplinary team of doctors. At present, he is hemodynamically stable, which means his vitals are stable and he is now looking fine. But earlier his condition was a little critical. What we are getting from our sources from the AIIMS authorities, because he was having a congestion in the chest, that is why he was having a problem in breathing. So after that he was taken to the observation. A team of doctors treated him. After that, his now condition is stated to be stable. But in the meantime, in the evening, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi came here, and following him, Amith Shah, who is our Home Minister, also came. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and other senior party leaders, and in fact the cabinet ministers also reached here. What we are getting from our sources that he will remain in the hospital for the coming days. Remember, Avni, earlier also he had the treatment in the hospital, in this AIIMS hospital, and in fact in this year, in the month of May, he was admitted in the hospital for a few days. But as of now, that what we are getting from the AIIMS, that he will be here for at least coming for 1 or 2 days. Back to you.
All right, Alok, thanks for getting us that update. That's the latest that we've got as far as Arun Jaitley's health is concerned. All right, let's now shift focus to the other extremely important issue at this point in time, which is the flood fury that we're seeing across several states in the country. Nature has unleashed its fury in states across. Some of the worst hit states include Maharashtra, Karnataka and Kerala. Heavy rains and floods have rendered people homeless. Lives have been lost. Thousands have been displaced. Thousands have been evacuated. Several others stranded for days, and simultaneous rescue operations have been going on to try and rescue people from the flood-hit zones. Let me welcome my guest for this, NVC Menon, who's a former member of the National Disaster Management Authority, is joining me at this point in time. Thank you very much, Professor Menon, for joining us today. This is a situation that we are seeing across the board in several states across the country. And these are, whether you talk about Karnataka, whether we talk about Maharashtra, Kerala, of course, we know what happened last time round. And again, once again, we are seeing extremely intense floods. What's your assessment of the situation?
Avni, actually, the situation is pretty grim because we have been seeing these kind of floods happening in different parts of the country during the monsoon season. But then last year, on the 16th of August, we had a very devastating floods and landslides in Kerala. And that is again repeated this time. In about 7 districts in the state of Kerala, red alert has been issued by the IMD. And we are also having a very serious situation in Maharashtra with Kolhapur, Sangli and Satara facing severe floods. And then, there have been a large number of people, more than 1.5 lakh people have been evacuated and they have been shifted to relief camps. So in Maharashtra. And so we have the situation happening in Maharashtra, in Karnataka, in Belgavi. The situation is very serious. There more than 9,000 livestock have been, affected. They have, there have been loss of crops. There have been devastation, loss of lives, as well as, in Wayanad district in Kerala, more than 40 people have actually been, been found missing because of severe mud flows which happened. So this kind of a situation is very serious. In Orissa, we had cyclones last year, a few months ago, and then we also have a situation that floods have affected. In Kerala last year, it was 31,000 crores, and then now in Orissa, the cyclone Fani has actually been estimated to have cost a damage of about more than 29,000 crores. So apart from the economic damage, there is also loss of lives and disruption of livelihoods. This is becoming a very serious matter. In fact, the unprecedented rainfall in most parts of the country has actually become a very serious problem. And, you must also understand that this is actually happening in states where there have also been serious situation of drought. And, we've had farmer suicides in Maharashtra. But, now nature is actually playing havoc because of the human interference in nature. And I think that is one of the most important issues which we will need to really address very seriously.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Menon. In fact, that was exactly what I wanted to talk to you about next, as far as, we've seen heavy rains in the past, we've seen unprecedented rainfall in the past, but the impact of all of this now, with the way it's happening, the way the flooding is happening, the extent, I mean, today, like you pointed out, whether it's Sangli, whether it's any of the other areas, the amount of flooding that is there, entire areas, entire districts are completely submerged. And we really need to, look into how much of that are we responsible for, how much of that is human interference.
Yeah, I think, that's a very important point which you have raised, because we need to understand that, a large number of quarries which have been opened, both legal and illegal, quarrying, sand mining, rock cutting, deforestation, these are all creating a lot of disturbances to nature. And you can also see that the illegal construction or unauthorized construction along the river banks is also creating a problem, because you are seeing a lot of resorts coming up, a lot of hotels coming up along the river banks and the coastal areas and all that, and this is also becoming a problem. So we need to really ensure that the regulations are properly followed. Very strict enforcement and compliance of our regulatory system is very much necessary, and we also need to strengthen community preparedness. We need to have multi-stakeholder engagement. Along with the government, we also need to ensure that development planning takes into account the multi-hazard vulnerability of the areas.
Right.
The Government of India has actually many flagship programs, and the Niti Aayog has given instructions that from the flagship programs, 25% of the budget could actually be utilized as flexi funds for disaster risk reduction. But unfortunately, the state governments are not really implementing that. So we need to ensure that, disaster risk reduction becomes a priority, and development plans at the local level, at the Gram Panchayat level and at the village level also needs to understand the multi-hazard risk and vulnerability of the areas.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, Professor Menon. In fact, let's just look at what's been happening in some of these states. Let's first focus on Maharashtra. Western districts of the state are reeling under one of the worst floods. 5 districts specifically, Kolhapur, Sangli, Satara, Pune and Sholapur have all been severely hit. The rescue operations at this point in time are on in full swing, where teams of multiple agencies are in action. Over 2 lakh people so far have been shifted to safer locations. Almost 1 lakh people have been rescued in Kolhapur. Over 80,000 people rescued in Sangli. In fact, today Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis briefed the Prime Minister as well on this situation, and Prime Minister has assured all assistance from the centre to Maharashtra. Take a look first at this report.
Mirror now is inside the city of Sangli, and we have been travelling throughout the day with the team of army who have been rescuing people through the day in the city of Sangli. You can see, if I can ask my video journalist Nitin Fattare to show you, that the entire city is flooded at the moment. Shops, houses, schools, temples, all of it have been submerged underwater, and right now we are on a boat with the team of the rescue people who were stranded and who have been stranded for the last 6 to 7 days without food, electricity and even water for that matter. If I can ask my video journalist to just show you the visuals, that how the shops are completely submerged underwater, the houses are completely submerged till first floor. The water that you can see is right ranging from 10 feet, and if we move further towards the city, it goes up to 20 feet deep. But that is the kind of water level we are looking at this point in time. किस तरह से पेशेंट्स आपको मिल रहे हैं अभी, आप किस तरह के पेशेंट्स ट्रीट कर रहे हैं ऑन एन एवरेज, एंड कितनी डिफिकल्टी आपको भी हो रही है, बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ द हॉस्पिटल्स वी सॉ आर आल्सो फ्लडेड, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी की इशू है, पानी की कमी है, तो हाउ आर यू गाइस ट्रीटिंग एट दिस पॉइंट?
ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा जो पेशेंट है वो सोर थ्रोट है, इन्फेक्शंस है, और बहुत से लोगों को स्किन इन्फेक्शन बहुत हुआ है, पानी में 3-3, 4-4 दिन है, और फीमेल्स जो है उनको सैनिटरी का भी थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम है.
Now the mainly thing is कि we have to cross 2 times with the boat, and then we have to reach the people at least for the treatment. So we are daily conducting our group of people group of doctors goes every day. They treats, and then in the evening they come back. So we have to travel with boats and then treat that accordingly.
So here we spoke to the team of Sangli doctors here in concern, who say that the patients are falling sick, and the symptoms are sore throat for that matter, and also mostly they are attending on priority to pregnant women as well, and even skin infection due to the flood water that they have been actually surviving in the last couple of days.
From Maharashtra, shifting focus to Karnataka, now 14 people have lost their lives in the flood-affected state. More than 15 districts in Karnataka are reeling under heavy rains and flooding. Joint rescue teams have evacuated about 1.2 lakh people so far. There are 19 NDRF teams, 2 SDRF teams, along with 11 army columns and 4 Navy choppers who have all been pressed into action. Chief Minister is closely tracking the situation. There are 272 relief camps set up. A holiday, of course, has been declared until the 15th of August in schools and colleges in these 18 districts. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is also expected to visit Belgavi on Saturday. Here's a report.
Well, rain has wreaked havoc across the states of Karnataka, Maharashtra and Kerala. But in Karnataka, it seems like the northern belt, mainly comprising Belgavi, Bagalkote, Vijaypura and of course the other districts, Chikkodi as well, have been affected most terribly. Apart from this, also now you have Madikeri, which is basically the Kodagu district as well, that has been affected. This apart, you have Shivmoga and many other districts also, of course, in the state that have been affected very badly. Well, this is what the situation looks like in Belgavi Belagavi right now, which is one of the worst affected districts. Now, that apart, also, of course, the district administration and the government of Karnataka have said that holidays have been declared in schools and colleges till the 15th of August, considering that the situation still remains to be grim. Now, the Chief Minister, Mr. B.S. Yediyurappa, did arrive in Belagavi yesterday to take stock of the situation, but even this comes after he drew a lot of criticism from the people of these districts for not having come earlier. And more importantly, also to remember here that while the Chief Minister was on a visit today, he drew further criticism for having gotten some of the villagers and the farmers lathi charged. Now, also, of course, if we do talk about the situation in terms of flood water, of course, that's really entered the homes, then most of the districts in that aspect have been affected terribly. You have teams of the NDRF, the SDRF and the army that have been pressed into action. You have in some of the districts like Belagavi also, of course, you have choppers also that are dropping food to these terribly affected homes, and rescue operations will, of course, continue over the next 1 week at least. And talking now, of course, about the discharge of water, an agreement has of course, been arrived upon by the Karnataka and the Maharashtra government. While the Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis had, of course, requested for water to be released from the Almaty Dam, the Karnataka government has obliged. They have started increasing, of course, the let-out of water from the Almaty Dam, and we're given to understand that going further, that would also be increased even more. While all of these families reel under this situation right now and have absolutely no idea about their future going further, it is uncertain. You have the men in uniform that are really doing their bit to try and ensure that all of them are moved to safety. This comes at a time when the Karnataka government has already drawn criticism. There is no cabinet expansion on the cards anytime soon. Most of these districts, most of them have been left without an MLA to take charge of the situation. So who is really going to be answerable at a time when the death tolls are also on the rise?
You can see there are more than 800 people are stuck here. It is very difficult to control the crowd. And second thing, as you are traveling through the water, you can see the depth and flow of water is very high. So it is becoming very difficult to negotiate that water. And third difficulty which we are facing is that it is very difficult to convince the people to move from this village because they are not listening us and they are not able to leave the village, and this is the main three difficulty we are facing in this village.
Professor Menon, if I can come back to you at this point, you just heard the situation as far as Maharashtra is concerned, Karnataka is concerned. Obviously, those who are involved in the rescue operations are facing their own set of difficulties and challenges in carrying out the rescue operations. But as somebody who has handled, somebody who's been part of the NDMA, what's the difference that you see when we talk about the disasters, these kind of disasters at this point in time, the level of flooding, the way things are being handled compared to perhaps years earlier?
Yeah. Actually, I think one of the most important issues which we need to recognize is the fact that natural disasters, climate change induced hydrometeorological disasters and extreme events are happening now on a much bigger scale, and the impact and the intensity of these and the frequency of these disasters are increasing. And this actually is something which all of us need to understand. The government officers in charge of disaster management, revenue and disaster management, and the state disaster management authorities, the district disaster management authorities, they all need to recognize that we need to strengthen our multi-hazard preparedness and also ensure that we understand the risk and vulnerability of the areas concerned. We need to also ensure that land use plans are prepared properly. We need to look at marking the inundation which is happening now. We have satellite imagery. We also have remote sensing, and modern technology is available. We need to look at all these to understand which are the areas which are likely to be flooded. And one more thing which is very important is that we have a large number of dams which we need to ensure that the water levels are monitored very closely. Water is released without actually waiting for a situation when it has to be a panic response, and then a panic reaction, then water is released without giving opportunity for people to be evacuated, and the people are not prepared. So it will create enormous harm to build structures. We see a lot of houses getting collapsed,
right,
especially houses which are built under the various Awas Yojana, mass housing schemes are getting destroyed.
Yes, yes. Professor Menon, I want to come to you on,
so these are some of the issues
Kerala,
which we need to recognize.
Yes, I want to come to you for one final word on Kerala, but before that, just tell our viewers what's been happening there. Over 30 people have lost their lives in Kerala as heavy rains and landslides hit the state. Even the IMD has issued red alert for 9 districts. Some of these districts on alert include Thrissur, Ernakulam and Wayanad. 3 dead bodies have been found from Kavalapara, where a landslide washed out at least 30 houses. However, rescue operations have been called off for the day due to heavy rainfall in the region. 15 relief camps have been set up in Nilambur. In Wayanad as well, over 60 people were rescued by the NDRF after a landslide hit residential areas. Earlier, Chief Minister took stock of the situation, held a review meeting as well. Well, that's as far as Kerala is concerned. But Professor Menon, a question to you is Kerala, of course, is just about perhaps getting back on its feet after what happened earlier last time round, and now facing yet another, these kind of floods once again is going to be something for the state to, very difficult for the state to recover from.
That's right, absolutely. In fact, last year's floods and landslides have been estimated to have caused economic losses of about 31,000 crores. And that is a huge loss to a state exchequer, which, the post-disaster reconstruction, rehabilitation and recovery would be enormous, financial implications. So I think, we need to basically, make sure that all state disaster management authorities recognize the need for preparing and also strengthening community preparedness, because civil society, all stakeholders, both Panchayati Raj institutions, urban local bodies, they all need to recognize that urban flooding is also becoming a problem. And we are seeing that, a large number of, violations which are happening in many parts, would need to be controlled and checked. And that is only way in which, we can strengthen community resilience.
Yes,
a lot of civil society organizations are contributing enormously. Corporate sector is coming forward and extending their support. And I think that, we all need to stand together and, we need to strengthen our preparedness, because the things are going to turn from bad to worse in the coming years if we do not do adequate preparedness.
Absolutely. Point taken, Professor Menon.
Absolutely,
completely agree with what you're saying. And the points that you've raised, extremely important. On one hand, important to increase the level of preparedness. The disaster management entire process perhaps needs to be increased across the board. But at the same time, we need to ensure that human interference doesn't worsen things, which, as we've been seeing, it already has. Simple things like taking care of the garbage problems, taking care of our water bodies, ensuring that our water bodies don't froth, which has been happening across lakes in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. All of these seem like small things, but they all contribute to exaggerating, to sort of making the situation worse when we come to such kind of national disaster, such kind of disasters that need to be dealt with. So those are some important points to think about. Well, Times Network is committed to the cause of India's growth with its Rise with India agenda. As an organic extension of this philosophy, we're partnering with the govt India Health Quiz Initiative that has launched today, with an aim to create public awareness and equip each and every Indian with the right facts and information regarding health, fitness, nutrition and wellness. Ultimate aim remains to empower citizens to make informed and healthy choices. Take a look.